Hello everyone and welcome to Metagame Mastery, where it's not just about what the card does, but how it impacts the game. Guilds of Ravnica pre-release is this weekend, so we're taking a look at all the limited archetypes, including Dimir Spygate. If you enjoy this content, click that subscribe button to get access to all our latest videos. And if you're looking to pick up a Guilds of Ravnica booster box, check out our Amazon affiliate link in the description below. Without further ado, big time! Go time! Let's go. First, we're going to take a look at the commons because that is what you will see the most of in your limited card pools. Now in this set, the Dimir specific mechanic is Surveil. Surveil allows you to look at the top X amount of cards of your library and put any number of them into your graveyard, and then the rest on top of your library in any order. For example, we have Notion Rain, which is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, blue, and a black. For a sorcery, you get to Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. Notion Rain deals 2 damage to you. So it's kind of like Super Scry. It allows you to reorder the top of your deck, get some virtual card advantage by controlling what you draw and when, and it allows you to populate your graveyard as well. This is a really solid card, allowing you to draw into gas late game, but also fuel your undergrowth cards or even get some surveil triggers, which there's going to be a variety of cards that reward you for using this mechanic. Watcher in the Mist is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, blue for a 3/4 spirit with flying. When Watcher in the Mist enters the battlefield, Surveil 2. This one is one you're going to want to pick highly, especially for a common. It's a sizable, evasive body that also gets you your surveil triggers. You're going to want to snatch this one up early. Dimir Informant is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a blue for a 1/4 human rogue. And when it enters the battlefield, you get to surveil 2. So this is kind of like a surveil version of Sailor of Means. And we know from previous sets, 1/4s are really great at slowing the game down and helping you control the combat math. And at the same time, this will trigger your surveil abilities and get you virtual card advantage. This is a solid 3-drop. Barrier of Bones is 1 black mana for a 0/3 skeleton wall with Defender. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. This is great for populating your graveyard early and bogging down the board a little bit. Dark Blade Agent is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, a blue and a black for a 2/3 human assassin. As long as you've surveilled this turn, it gains Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So this card's very reminiscent to Shadow Mage Infiltrator, which is a ridiculously good card. It's contingent on you surveilling, but there's so many cards with surveil that you should pretty consistently be able to do that. And when you do so, you make it so that your opponent has to choose. Do they want to lose a creature by blocking it, or do they want to allow you to gain card advantage? Either way, you're in a better position for it. Unexplained Disappearance is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a blue for an instant. Return target creature to its owner's hand, surveil 1. Very powerful bounce card for a cheap cost and getting you virtual card advantage in the process. Win, win, win. Deadly Visit is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, black for a sorcery, destroy target creature, surveil 2. Now, that's pretty expensive for a removal spell, but it's unconditional with virtual card advantage. It's still really good and limited. Devious Cover Up is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, blue for an instant counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into your opponent's graveyard. You may shuffle up to 4 target cards from your graveyard into your library. So this one's a little bit tricky. You want to hold up the mana and cast this on an opponent who's tapping out for one big spell. Then you get to exile it so they can't do graveyard shenanigans with it. There's a lot of them in this set. And then lastly, you get to shuffle 4 cards back into your library to keep yourself from being milled out. Overall, it's a really solid card. You just have to know how to play it right. Mephitic Vapors is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a black for a sorcery. All creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Surveil 2. Now you have to be careful when you play this, but the majority of your creatures are going to have more than one toughness, whereas there are a variety of Boros creatures, Selesnya creatures, Golgari creatures that are all going to have one toughness. So in that regard, you can get card advantage by getting a 2-for-1, 3-for-1, maybe even more, and you get to populate your graveyard and reorder the top of your deck as well. Overall, good value. Artful Takedown is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, a blue and a black for an instant. Choose one or both. Tap target creature gets -2/-4 until end of turn. This card's great. It's just an amazing 2-for-1. You get a tempo play and you get a removal spell in one. Really good card. Expect to pick this one up early in packs. Capture Sphere is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a blue for an enchantment aura with flash. Enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap stop. So this is a Claustrophobia with flash at instant speed, and it's a little bit more splashable, obviously, with only 1 blue mana. That said, it's fine removal, especially in limited, where creatures attack a lot. Tapping them down so that they can't do that anymore is very effective in this format. Disdainful Stroke is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a blue for an instant counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. If you look at this just as a removal spell for your opponent's bombs, this is still a really good card. Hired Poisoner is 1 black mana for a 1/1 human assassin with Death Touch. Just a great way to populate the board. You get a Rattlesnake out there, and you can sack it later on if need be. Severed Strands is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a black for a sorcery. It's an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature. You gain life equal to the sacrifice creature's toughness. Destroy target creature and opponent controls. So this is fine. This is a good way for you to get rid of something that's no longer relevant on the board and effectively trade up by killing your opponent's best creature. Never Happened is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it or that player's graveyard and exile it. So there's a lot to unpack here. You're getting information, being able to see what's in your opponent's hand. You're getting to not only remove their best play from their hand, but their graveyard also, in case they have graveyard shenanigans, and you're exiling it so that even if it is coming out of their hand, they don't get graveyard shenanigans off of it. Overall, very flexible, a little bit expensive for my taste, but potentially very powerful in this environment. Passwall Adept is 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a blue for a 1/3 human wizard. You can pay 2 colors and a blue. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Just a great way to sneak through some extra damage late game with your value bear early game. Whisper Agent is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, and 2 hybrid Dimir for a 3/2 human rogue with flash. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. So the one reason I like this in this deck is I don't typically like 3/2s for 3. But if you're holding up mana for, say, a counter spell of some kind or instant, and for whatever reason you decide it's not best to use it at that time, you can very easily drop Whisper Agent at the end of your opponent's turn and gain board presence. And also you get a surveil trigger as well. Maximize Altitude is 1 blue mana for a sorcery. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. It also has Jumpstart. So I like this, just being able to push through damage later on in the game, giving your creatures evasion, and you can do this twice off of 1 card. Radical Idea is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a blue for an instant. You get to draw a card. It also has Jumpstart. I like this in this deck as well, just allowing you to get card advantage and some deck thinning so that you can get down to your big bombs or the control cards you need. And next up we have the uncommons. Thought Erasure is 2 CMC, a blue and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, that player discards that card, and you get to surveil 1. This is really good. You get to Thought Seize an opponent, and you get to the virtual card advantage of surveilling. Overall, just a solid turn 2 play. Here we have Discovery and Dispersal. Discovery is 2 CMC, a colorless and a hybrid Dimir for a sorcery. You get to surveil 2, then draw a card, which is good. It's about as close as we're going to get to reprint of Ponder in a standard set. It allows you to dig through your deck faster, populate your graveyard, and get to the answers you need. Whereas Dispersal is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, a blue and a black for an instant. Each opponent returns a non-land permanent they control with the highest CMC to their hand, and then they discard a card. Dispersal is a good late game tempo play. You play it at the end of your opponent's turn, you force them to be set back as much as possible, and then you get the next turn to respond to their weakened board state. So overall, this is just a really good card for this deck. High draft pick. House Guildgate is 2 CMC, a blue and a black for a 2/2 human wizard. You could pay 1 colorless and a blue, tap it, and target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Or you could pay 2 colorless and a black, tap it, and surveil 2. Getting repeatable surveil at instant speed is very powerful, and being able to freeze your opponent's creatures that have already attacked in so that they can't do it again next turn is also extremely valuable, especially for only 2 mana. Nightveil Predator is 4 CMC, 2 blue, 2 black for a 3/3 vampire with flying, death touch, and hexproof. This guy has all the keywords. Vampire Bluehawk is a beast and first pickable in what I would think is the majority of packs. This guy's sick. Nightveil Sprite is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a blue for a 1/2 fairy rogue with flying. Whenever it attacks, you scry 1. Just getting you a scry trigger every single turn, virtual card advantage on an evasive body is really solid for only 2 mana. Price of Fame is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a black for an instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a legendary creature. Destroy target creature. Surveil 2. So even if you're not getting the reduced cost on this, it's 4 mana for an instant unconditional destroy creature, and you get to surveil, getting you a trigger, virtual card advantage, populating your graveyard. But if they are playing, say, Niv Mizzet, Tristani, Aurelia, or any of the other heads of the guilds, then you get this at an absolute bargain price. This is premium removal. Enhanced Surveillance is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and a blue for an enchantment. You may look at an additional 2 cards each time you surveil. Exile this card and shuffle your graveyard into your library. This card is great. You have to be careful about playing it on turn 2. Ideally, you want to put a body on the board. But if you're playing off curve on turn 4, for example, turn 5, then this is going to get you extreme value late game, and it'll keep you from decking yourself. Overall, really cool card. Thoughtbound Phantasm is 1 blue mana for a 2/2 spirit with Defender. Whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on him. As long as he has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on him, he can attack as though he didn't have Defender. This guy's such a value creature. You definitely want to get him down on turn 1, but even if you play him afterwards, he only costs 1 mana. He's not going to throw you way off curve. You're getting more than what you pay for, just getting a 2/2 for 1. But then as you accumulate value with the +1/+1 counters over the course of the game, he's going to be attacking in for a 5/5 in no time. That's great. Dimir Spybug is 2 CMC, a blue and a black for a 1/1 insect with flying and menace, making this extremely difficult to block. And whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is a value engine if ever I've seen it. Possibly your main kill condition in your Dimir decks. Whispering Snitch is 2 CMC, a colorless and a black for a 1/3 vampire rogue. Whenever you surveil for the first time each turn, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. Just getting even more value off of your surveil cards. This is a fair costed body that gets you extreme value over the course of a game. Creeping Chill is 4 CMC, 3 colorless and a black. Don't worry about it though, you're never going to pay that because it's a sorcery that deals 3 damage to each opponent and you gain 3 life. But if it hits your graveyard from your library, then you may exile it. If you do, it deals 3 damage to each opponent and you gain 3 life. So the goal is to hit this off of Surveil and cast free Lightning Helix every time you see this. That's solid. That's a really good card to throw into a deck with a lot of Surveil cards. Disinformation Campaign is 3 CMC, a colorless, a blue, and a black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and each opponent discards a card. Whenever you surveil, return it to your hand. This is a card you don't want to drop on turn 3. It's for the late game, locking your opponent down so that they're top decking for the rest of the game. Meanwhile, you have card advantage. In that regard, it can be extremely powerful, assuming you survive to the late game. Selective Snare is X and a blue for a sorcery. Return X target creatures of the creature type of your choice to their owner's hand. So the idea with this is to get some one-sided board wipes in. Hit as many of your opponent's creatures in, get a 2-for-1, 3-for-1, wipe out all their tokens, and see value that way. And in that regard, this can be a very powerful removal spell. Plaguecrafter is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a black for a 3/2 human shaman. When it enters the battlefield, each player sacks a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. This thing is Fleshbag Marauder on steroids. It allows you to drop it, you can sack itself if need be, or if you have a smaller creature, you can leave the 3/2 body on the board. And your opponent either gets an edict effect, or they have to lose a planeswalker, or you gain card advantage. Either way, this is a good card no matter how you play it. Pilfering Imp is 1 black mana for a 1/1 imp with flying. You can pay 1 colorless and a black, tap it and sack it. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an online card from it. That player discards that card. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So 1/1 flyers are lava axes because they'll pretty consistently get 5 damage across the board before anybody deals with them. On top of that, this gives you the option so that when it's no longer relevant on the board state, you can tap it and sack it to gain information about what's in your opponent's hand and get rid of their best card. So overall, this is a really solid choice, especially for a control deck like this one. Necrotic Wound is 1 black mana for an instant with Undergrowth. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Great premium removal for this deck because you're going to be filling your graveyard so quickly with Surveil. Blotleth Giant is 7 CMC, 6 colorless, and a black for a 6/5 zombie giant with Undergrowth. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature card in your graveyard. A great late game way to finish your opponent off and get an additional payoff for doing so much Surveil throughout the game. Chemist's Insight is 4 CMC, 3 colorless, and a blue for an instant, draw 2 cards. It also has Jumpstart. So this is a great card allowing you to spend 8 mana over the course of 2 turns at instant speed, presumably at the end of an opponent's turn if and when you don't use your control spells, to draw 4 cards and discard 1. That's a really solid card, especially in limited, and the card advantage is going to be great in this sort of control type strategy. And now for the rares. When you look at rares, you're not going to see them as often, but they tend to be more bomby, more explosive, more finish the game. For example, Etrata the Silencer is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, a black and a blue for a 3/5 legendary vampire assassin. She can't be blocked, and whenever she deals combat damage to a player, exile target creature that player controls and put a hit counter on that card. That player loses the game if they own 3 or more exiled cards with hit counters on them. And then she shuffles back into her owner's library. She's obviously much stronger in Commander, but in Limited she's actually really good as a way for you to push damage across the board and at the same time get repeatable source of removal in your deck. And you can dig her out pretty easily with your Surveil cards as well. Blood Operative is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, black for a 3/1 vampire assassin with lifelink. He enters the battlefield, you may exile target card from a graveyard, making him a really good hate card against all the graveyard shenanigans in this set. And then whenever you Surveil, if he's in your graveyard, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return him to your hand, allowing you to get that ETB effect over and over again. And with his lifelink, he has the ability to pay for himself over time. Connive and Concoct. Connive is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, and 2 hybrid Dimir for a sorcery. Gain control of target creature with power 2 or less. This is really good for hitting those creatures that have yet to be mentored, those legendary creatures like Aurelia. You not only remove it from your opponent's board, but you add it to your own, making for a very big board swing. And then Concoct is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, a blue and a black for a sorcery. Surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, allowing you to populate your graveyard and then take the best option from it and cheat it into play. Gruesome Menagerie is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, black for sorcery. Choose a creature card with converted mana cost 1, 2, and 3. Return those cards to the battlefield. This is another good payoff for populating your graveyard with Surveil or just regular playing Magic, and you can populate your board very quickly. Mausoleum Secrets is 2 CMC, 1 colorless, and 1 black for an instant with Undergrowth. Search your library for a black card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library. This is okay here. You're not going to be running as many creatures as in the Golgari build, but for only 2 mana, this is a great way for you to search your deck for the answers you need. Midnight Reaper is 3 CMC, 2 colorless, and a black for a 3/2 zombie knight. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, he deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. Typically I don't like 3/2s for 3. This guy though has the ability to replace himself, and on top of that, if your other creatures die off over the course of the game, he nets you card advantage over time. Mission Briefing is 2 blue for an instant, Surveil 2, then choose an instant or sorcery card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. If that card would be put into the graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So this card allows you to gain virtual card advantage through Surveil, populate your graveyard, and then choose the best option as a way to get back a removal spell, timely counter spell, whatever the case may be. This is really good card advantage in this deck. Necrombia is really going to shine in this strategy. It's 2 CMC, 1 colorless and a blue, but you're never going to pay that because it's a 1/1 with flying that when it's put into your graveyard from your library, you may put it onto the battlefield, just allowing you to get free flying men on the board, pinging your opponent's life total down. Thief of Sanity is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, a blue and a black for a 2/2 Spectre with flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library. Exile one of them face down and put the rest into their graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it, you may cast it, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. Wow. So this is a mill engine that takes your opponent's best card that's being milled and gives you access to it instead of them. This is repeatable card advantage on evasive body. This is just going to be take over games when you slam this on the board. Unmoored Ego is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, 1 blue, and 1 black. For a sorcery, choose a card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with that name and exile them. That player shuffles their library, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way. Now, in Limited, you're going to want to concentrate on powerful removal spells, bomb cards, but you can also, in this format, people are going to be splashing 3 or 4 colors. You can nix all the basic land cards they run of that splash color to cut them off from that card that they try to stretch their mana to have access to. Next up, we have the Mythic slot. These are, of course, the cards you're going to see the least, and they tend to be the biggest bombs. Lazav the Multifarious is 2 CMC, a blue and a black for a 1/3 legendary shapeshifter. When he enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. You can pay X, and he becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with converted mana cost X, except its name is still Lazav, he's still legendary, and he has this ability. So Lazav's just really good. On his own, he's a bear with upside. On top of that, you get the ability to make him a copy of your best creature in your graveyard anytime. Even if you just surveil it into your graveyard, he can become a copy of it. So that's really solid just for playing Magic in general. This guy's going to play really well with your overall surveil theme. Mnemonic Betrayal is 3 CMC, 1 colorless, blue and a black for a sorcery. Exile all cards in all opponents' graveyards. You may cast these cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast these spells. At the beginning of the next end step, if any of these cards remained exiled, return them to their owner's graveyards. Exile Mnemonic Betrayal. So this is obviously your ultimate late game payoff, being able to cast everything in your opponent's graveyard and get all their best cards on the board in one turn. Massive card advantage card. This thing's going to be a bomb, but make sure you don't try and pop this off early. Stall the game out and then finish them off with their own cards. Doom Whisperer is 5 CMC, 3 colorless, black for a 6/6 Nightmare Demon with flying and trample. You can pay 2 life to surveil 2. So this guy is a beast no matter what. He's a 5 mana, 6/6 flying trample. That's a bomb in any format. Then he gives you the ability to, anytime you want, at instant speed for no mana, surveil 2, getting all the triggers on all of your surveil payoff cards. This guy's especially sick in this deck. Dream Eater is 6 CMC, 4 colorless, blue for a 4/3 Nightmare Sphinx with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 4. When you do, you may return target non-land permanent and opponent controls to its owner's hand. So I've covered this time and time again. This thing does work for days. You're paying 6 mana for an evasive 4/3 body. He has flash, so you could cheat him into play, mess with the combat bath, kill an opponent's creature with a surprise block. You get to surveil 4, which is a massive amount for you to populate your graveyard, get virtual card advantage, and then on top of that, you get to bounce an opponent's creature for a massive tempo play. This thing does it all. Now, if you've been watching the other videos of this series, I've talked a lot about how this is a format where you're going to want to splash a 3rd, maybe even a 4th color in your deck. And while Dimir is the most easily splashable guild for you to add to any other deck, it actually has the least incentive for you to splash other guilds. There is one card in particular I want you to be cognizant of, though, and that's Status and Statue. Status is a hybrid Golgari, so you can cast it for just 1 black mana for an instant. target creature gets +1/+1 and gains death touch until end of turn, turning even your Wall of Bones into a serious threat. And then statue is 4 CMC, 2 colorless, a black and a green for an instant destroy target artifact, creature, or an enchantment. So if you can splash even 1 green mana into your deck and have it on the board, when you cast this, you can get reliable, unconditional removal for 3 permanent types. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this content, click that subscribe button so you get access to all our latest videos. And if you're looking to order your Guilds of Ravnica booster box, check out our Amazon affiliate link in the description below. This has been Metagame Mastery. Peace!